So good evening, everybody. I'm just going through 5 of our works in order to come to 3 themes in our work, which might also play a role here in the development of the Nobel Prize Center, but they are interests we follow since we founded the office 25 years ago. So the first of the titles, Structure and Space, is that in many of our projects we try to introduce the structure as a space-generating element. So not so much just to carry the building, but also to control the spatial development of the construction. The first project is an extension of roofs in Zurich main station. The station always grows to the city, and we added the 2 roofs on the side. And unlike the competition brief asked for, our target was to completely open that station to the city, so to connect the public urban space with the space of the trains, yes. And for that we developed like a very light but large structure with an enormous span in order to have only little number of columns in order to really connect the spaces themselves. And so today it's quite amazing that the trains arrive now in Zurich main station like trams. You know, they're just next to the walkways and are a kind of a public event. And the movement that happens in the station is now a public movement which directly links to the city. So this is a project which really tried to make the structure itself to the architectural element. Another project which you might probably know is the College for Wood Engineering in Biel, and there it's more kind of hybrid, this interest. So this school or this college stands on an industrial site. It's only for wood engineering, and it competes with the mountains of the Jura. What we did actually, we just composed it of a couple of boxes which were set into this industrial landscape and which were covered by a very rough workshop-like relief of different woods, and in the inside it was composed or developed by a system, a wood system which we developed together with an engineer, wooden tubes which allowed for a very large span of the classrooms, of the seminaries and of the hall. So we wanted to have these structural elements as part of the spaces themselves, so of the ceiling or the wall or whatever. So here you can see these wooden tubes in the middle. And this is now how it is. These hollow tubes, these hollow beams are the ceiling themselves. It's not cladded anymore. So the static element produces the space itself. That's at nighttime to the classrooms, and you can see on the ceiling again with the acoustic elements this kind of hollow beams. So we made a couple of projects which also were kind of really dealing with the landscape and which interested us a lot. The first one I'm going to show is actually not architecture, but the bridge we made together with our engineer, Jürg. And in this case, it is also the same interest to use the wood as a kind of almost homogeneous material, like concrete or something like that. So we wanted to get rid of this coziness of wood and use it as a very heavy, strong, modern material, which is able then to organize the whole building itself. One of our major targets was actually not to make a bridge, but a building over the water. So it should be a modern building, which today it hosts also parties of the village on them. There are hundreds of people on it, and it still carries. And So the secret behind it is a very clever static system by Jörg Konzept, which works instead of diagonals with two large shear walls. We call that a Virondelle beam, which organizes the complete space. So the entrance spaces, the middle spaces, they are all organized by these walls, which are very thick and therefore have like a front of almost a meter, which is able also to control the space in the middle. So actually, we always dreamed of a bridge that should be like a piece of wood brought with the water and plucked by the landscape, and there connects with like little wooden pieces to the station on the right side, or to the village or the city on the other side. But it should be homogeneous, one piece. Is that the construction? The third point, program as a trigger. We try very often to use the program itself as something that provokes the architecture. In this case, it was the program of a revolving restaurant on the top of the mountain called Hoher Kasten. And we were very bored, actually, by these alpine revolving restaurants, which are circles and have kind of ribbons moving around in a very slow moment. And this is not so interesting. So we were involved. So this is the site. It's quite spectacular, I would say. And, and we were inspired by this Italian modern building. A couple of years ago, we made a movie about that. And the interesting thing is that the whole building revolves. So it is, therefore, you can always see it in the landscape in which direction it has, and of course it also moves spaces like the terrace. So they change their position to the landscape or to the vineyard or whatever. And we found that very interesting, so we made a plan that followed that system, that the whole restaurant should be revolving, and that it should be shaped in a manner where you have these terraces and these edges, which always would then indicate different directions in the landscape. So from quite far away, you can always sense the position of the building, where it looks like. So we won that competition, but unfortunately it was never built because it showed to be too expensive. But, but we liked very much this project. And also the interior space, of course, was shaped by these cantilevering beams that due to the system of the revolving restaurant, but of course it also orientates the space to the landscape. Then one of our most challenging projects is the House for Volksmusik in Toggenburg. It's a kind of a laboratory for fusion of folk music from all over the world. It's a specific type of so-called Obertonmusik, which is a specific series of physically generated tones which are a little bit slightly different to the row we know from the well-temperature piano. And so this workshop or this laboratory for music is in a very nice valley in the east of Switzerland, next to this lake. And the whole organization of that music is going on for years now. So it works really. They make kind of festivals with people from Mongolia, from Africa, and Swiss popular music. And so this is Obertonmusik. That's a little bit... so the specific thing behind the Oberton music is that it only works through division of sinus tones, so in a physical manner. So you double or you quadruple tones in order to have steps, and it comes out of all like horns or so of all instruments that do not have like holes for the finger. And so this is a physical phenomenon. And this building is now made for this type of music. We were inspired by two elements. This is from a concert hall from Isfahan in Persia with these resonant chambers. And this is also an amazing piece. It's of the British Air Force in the First World War. Before there were amplifiers, they listened by these elements to German airplanes, you know, to hear them very early. And we found this kind of collector of sound of the landscape quite interesting. So we made a building out of that. So for the outside, we made these parabolic walls to collect the sound of the landscape, which is for folk music very important. They mix their sound, let's say, with the bell of the cows or with the wind or the water or whatever. And in the interior, we made it the whole building almost like an instrument. So we applied this Persian resonant chambers. They have doors so that they can be open and closed and completely change the sound character of this space. Of course, this is not a concert hall. This is a workshop for music, and therefore you can work with the space almost like with an instrument. So that's how it stands in the landscape, and it opens the landscape by huge windows, because these windows are also very important. And here you can now see the resonant chambers, which are kind of with movable doors, and so that you can adjust the sound conditions of the space. Okay, so I think we stop here, and I think I have now the 10 minutes or even more. I thank you very much for your